Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Doug Smith with Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and today's Behavior Cadre, we're going to be talking about or looking at student engagement. Uh, please feel free to unmute, ask any questions, make any comments, whatever you wish to do during our presentation. And thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. And again, welcome. I'm Doug Smith, and we're talking about student engagement. So what I want you to do, starting out, just think for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Let's look at one each of these questions. What is your fondest memory from your K through 12 school experience? It doesn't necessarily have to be the most exciting thing or the we won the state tournament or our academic team got to go to nationals or anything like that. But what is the fondest memory that you have from your K through 12 school experience? Also think about what's your most vivid memory from your K through 12 school experience. And then what is the most important thing that happened to you during your K through 12 school experience? So I guess one of my fondest memories from K through 12 was I had a teacher when I was first grade, and we were reading groups, and this gentleman, he was my reading group teacher. We grew up in a community, same area and same place, and things like that. But I always remembered the way that he always encouraged me and always made me feel like that I could do anything that I set my mind to, and he was always there, supportive, and just had that connection that he made with not only myself but with other students as well. But that was one of my fondest memories. I guess one of my most vivid memories, and it's silly, and why I remember it well, because I accomplished something, or at least I thought so. So you know, younger seventh, sixth, seventh grade, something like that. There's a classmate that was, I mean, was fast, could run really, really fast, and so I mean he was the fastest kid in the school, and so one day I accidentally beat him in a foot race, and I was just so excited that I won. And so he even congratulated me and gave a high five and said, that was a great job. No one's ever beat me and stuff like that. So did he let me win? Maybe, but that was a vivid memory that I have from K through 8, I guess you could say. And I think one of the most important things that happened to me during my school experience was uh, just feeling like, I belonged someone. I was belonged somewhere. I was part of the school, a part of that community, and part of the the cultural area and things like that. It was and that was, I guess, the most important thing is I felt welcomed, I felt supported, I felt cared about, and encouraged. So I think without some of that encouragement and so forth, I think a lot of our students, and myself included, didn't would not have a very enjoyable school experience. So just think about those things, your fondest memories, your most vivid memory, and the most important thing that happened to you. And when you think about those things, do we think about the people? Do we think about activities and events? Or do we think about instruction? Do we think about the way they taught us or the way they treated us? I've heard it said, and I say it sometimes myself, is, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think it's really important when you get into looking at student engagement and making our students feel a part of that. What is it that's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? What are they? So you start out with your physiological needs, such as food, water, shelter, rest. Kiddos come to school. What we do? We feed them breakfast. We feed them lunch. Some schools have after school events where they feed the kids that stay after school and things like that. So we provide for that physiological needs. Next, the next thing, as long as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we look at safety needs, security, stability, freedom from fear. We got to look at are our schools a safe place for our kids? We try to provide them with that. This is a safe place. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. We learn from mistakes. This is a place for where mistakes create an opportunity for learning, and that's what we want our schools to be. We also want them to be uh, stable and secure in the way that we develop our rules and expectations, and the way that we manage our classroom or and the relationships that we build with our students. They help provide for that safety, not only physical safety, but for that emotional and safety as well. I mean, you got to provide for a safe and stable environment for the kids that you're working with. The next order of needs are our social needs, social and belonging needs. And so that looks at friendship, intimacy, acceptance, connection, feeling like you're a part of something, feeling like you belong to something. So when we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and of course, Maslow suggested that you can't progress uh, upward until you have that basic physiological need met, and then you can uh, actually progress throughout the hierarchy of needs. So what we're going to do is let's look a little bit about. Okay, cool, awesome. Thanks for sharing. Let me. Thank you. Uh, so yeah, if please, if you can, if you can't access the chat, let me just go over that really quick. So some of the fondest memory was a seventh grade teacher sharing funny stories. Okay, so that why was that a fond memory? Think about that. Did that teacher share those stories to build that connection, or did that teacher share those stories as part of the instruction? And if they did, it still built that connection. Dance routines with friends on the playground. Oh, awesome, vivid memory. And the most important part, being a team that built my friends and those activities. Thank you for sharing out. Appreciate that. So, our learning intentions, I guess you could say, are we will be asking, what is student engagement? Talking about student engagement. We're going to be looking at a definition. We're going to be thinking about why, and we'll talk briefly about some of the benefits. And I'm just going to hit on these briefly, as there's we crunch for time, and then just an overview of student engagement. So we will also look at some key components of student engagement, discuss dimensions of student engagement, and look at evidence-based strategies to increase student engagement. So hopefully you go away from here with some ideas and some strategies to look at implementing in your classroom to improve student engagement, and including some various opportunities to respond. So what is student engagement? So if we think about student engagement, what do you think about when you hear the words student engagement?
Being active.
Being active. Okay. As in, explain just a little bit, please.
Just, well, actually physically doing part of an activity rather than just sitting and sit and get. Instead of doing that, they're actually, um, I guess, responding or doing something ac- active. It
Sounds good.
Well, Kelly has saved me in the chat. She's participating and paying attention, working with partners or in a small group. So thank you, ladies, for saving me from the chat.
Yeah, thank y'all for rescuing us on that one. Appreciate that. All right, so when we're looking at student engagement, I guess a definition that I will throw out there is just some ideas, and this is not by all means the most accurate or professional definition of student engagement. I'm sure there's better definitions out there, but this is kind of a working definition that I've looked at, and I think it's the extent to which students show attention, curiosity, optimism, and interest in the material that they're being taught. Shows it may refer to their cognitive investment in their learning, and so and include participation and committing to their studies. So, student engagement is made up of emotional, behavioral, and cognitive engagement. Emotional engagement shows students how the students feel about their instructor, their classroom, and their sense of belonging. Again, if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's that sense of belonging, that sense of feeling a part of an environment or part of a culture. So then the second thing that we looked at is that behavioral engagement looks at how attentive and invested students are in their classes. Like you were saying, the activities, the things that we do in our classroom, how behaviorally, how can they act to show what they know and what the content's covering. And then you got to look at the cognitive uh, engagement, which shows motivation the motivation behind student learning, the internal motivators that those students, intrinsic motivators that those students have to want to continue on with their education, take more classes, go on to higher education and things like that. And it doesn't necessarily only have to be kids going to college. I mean, college is not for everyone. There are several vocational or skill uh, areas or trade areas out there that pay really well. And students, some of our special ed students thrive or do much better on hands-on activity, project-based learning than they do just sitting and getting, which, we do the same as well. So do we want to look at student engagement? Why do you think that would be important? Not only is it important to the students, but it's extremely important for educators because you're the ones that are trying to enrich their school experience or tie their school experience into like being confident in their abilities and have an optimistic outlook for the future so that the students are successful in what they decide to do. Other reasons is, I mean, when students display high levels of engagement, they're more likely to excel academically, of course. They form a stronger sense of connection with their school and that community, and then have a more positive sense of social emotional well being. So, what are some of the benefits? What would you think some of the benefits of student engagement would be? One of the main key or the big benefits I can think of, if we have our students engaged in academics or engaged in instruction, they don't have time to be engaged in the behavior issues. So, the more engaged and the more active and the more uh, uh, that you put out there for the students to be involved with, uh, the better the behaviors are going to be. Because if the academics excel, then the behavior difficulties are going to decrease. Someone have something in the chat.
Uh, it can increase self confidence.
Oh yes, like that definitely increase that self confidence. Uh,
That's me, Doug. It's Tony Isaac.
hey, how you doing, sir?
Pretty good. I just have to throw this out here and I'll get off here and shut my mouth.
Oh
Uh,
no.
is I was thinking, and this really doesn't have so much to do with engagement in a classroom so much as my homeroom. Uh, the way they've done it the past 4 years, when you take a class, which I like the concept, whatever homeroom you got, you kept. So I've had these kids now; they're seniors, and when you said that, it made me think of a kid which we do these college prep stuff and things in homeroom. But the kid in particular would not speak, like literally did not speak. I don't think till he was a sophomore, or maybe even a junior. And now he talks to every kid in the classroom. And to me, that's more. I'm old. That's more important than 2 plus 2 to me.
Yes, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, because that kid now feel whatever you did, you brought him out of that shell. So now he feels like he is part of not just your homeroom, but part of that school and that class and that community now. And that, like you said, I think it goes a long way. That teaches a lot of those soft skills or those skills that you need every day in the everyday world. Other than the, like you said, 2 plus 2, you need to be able to communicate. You have to be able to share ideals, work as a team, cooperate, and things like that. Thank you. That's a wonderful point. Appreciate it. Anything else? Okay, one little caveat at the bottom there says, on average, a child's attention span is about 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. So just think about it. If we got a 10-year-old, after 20 to 30 minutes, you should change activities in order to keep that student engaged or in order to keep them interested in what's going on. Because, like our, we, our kiddos are like us or we're like them. After so long, you get tired of sitting and getting, and you got to get up and move and be able to interact, change those activities. And so just think about that when you're looking at your forming your lessons or creating your lessons, and look at opportunities to respond, and we'll talk about those briefly. But on average, the attention span is like 2 to 3 minutes per year of age, so just be aware of that. So there are three key components to support student engagement. The first component is positive teacher-student relationships. Teachers must build positive relationships with their students in order to not only just develop that, just to be that person in that school that when that student needs someone that they can go to or someone that they need to talk to, you're that person, you're available to them, and you're willing to work with them and talk with and be there for that student. Some of our schools, we're large schools, and we may not know all students in that school or whatever, but try to get to know your students, and especially the ones that you have in homeroom or in your classroom. So one of the ways of building positive student engagement is being connected to students in their lives. Uh, know what's going on with them. If you meet them of the morning, greet them as they come in. Hey, good morning, nice to see you. Happy you're here. Or if you heard, a sporting event, I heard you did really well last night at the game. Or congratulations on winning the academic meet. Or I heard your uh, art project was the best. Won the prize, and you're going on to compete against other students in the district. That's great. Find out what's going on with those students, and be a part of their lives. I'm not saying you got to be there and take care of them and everything that's going on, but if they have a sporting event and you know that they are part of the team, attend that event and then talk to them about it afterwards. And just find ways that you can build those relationships to show those students, like I said, to show them that you care, and be genuine, because you know as well as I do that students can pick up on you if you're being fake or not. So when you're faking it, they pick up on that. But just like I said, ask students about what's going on in their life. I got a young niece and nephew that go kart race. I don't get to see them any or anything like that racing, but I always ask them how they did, and they're just happy to share that with me. I'm just asking them a part of their life. I had kids that uh, I had this young man in class, his dad and he were rebuilding a motorcycle. And so he would get frustrated and angry and upset or whatever. And so I would look for something to kind of distract and to turn the frustration around and get him back on track. And I'd ask him about his bike and how he was doing and how it was coming along and things like that. And man, he would just lighten up, and all bright, and tell me about it and tell me what they'd done and things like that. And so kind of brought him back down, calmed him back down a little bit, I guess you could say, de-escalated the situation, and then we got back to work. But that was just one of those connections I had with that kid. And you're going to have, different connections with different kids, different ways to talk to them, different ways to connect with them. And so, but just work on building that relationship and work on, uh, you know, trying to find out about their families, their culture, their background, and attending events that they're a part of, and just be a part of their lives, and other than just as the teacher or as the educator, be part of their lives. I'm not saying you have to be best buddies or best friends with them, but I'm just saying, you know, there's a strategy. It's called 2 by 10. You take 2 minutes a day for 10 days, and just set aside that time to talk with one student about anything they want to talk about. It doesn't necessarily have to be about school or academics or anything like that, but just try to get to know something about that student. After those 10 days, if you haven't built a little bit better relationship, at least you learned something about that student. At least you learned how you can connect with that student. And what'd you lose? 20 minutes, but you may have found something that helps you build that relationship and helps you to be that one that when that student needs somebody, they're willing to come to you.
And on that note, we don't realize how, like, years down the line, even, what an impact that's going to make. Just thinking about that, your opening question, about our memories. We are adults, and it's been a minute since we've been in elementary school, and every one of us looking back at the chat, what was put in the chat and what was shared, it was like stories that from the teachers, and and not one memory has come from the instructional piece. And so that's what we brought with us as adults. So, just thinking about that for our students, when our students get to be adults, what are they going to remember?
Yeah, that was uh and we used to do another activity like that, what was your favorite thing about school, your favorite teacher, and what was your least favorite teacher, and what were those characteristics? And we would then have a discussion about, all right, so how are these characteristics different, and most of the things, like you said, were the things that they were like, they made me feel wanted, they made me feel welcome, they made me feel like I was successful, they encouraged me and things like that. So yes, thank you. That's a great point. Uh, well, maybe it'll come back to me. I had another thought. So another thing, the component of student engagement to support engagement is to look at a variety of strategies for engagement. So teachers use a variety of strategies during their lessons. Got numerous opportunities to promote student engagement. Some of the things that we're talking about is, open-ended questions. Have a discussion, some way that you can have your students to discuss what's going on, open up to you. If you ask a yes, no a question, what are you going to get? A yes or no. So if you want to have your students open up, also different ways of opportunities to respond. You could have a oral questioning. You could do choral responding. You could do, choral reading. You could do whiteboards, use those to respond for responses. Just what are some different ways that you can have for your students to respond to you or your questions in the content? I think one of the key things with opportunities to respond, and before you say anything, you should use 3 to 10 different opportunities or opportunities to respond for every 10 minutes or for every minute. But when you're looking at developing or creating opportunities to respond in your lesson plans, you don't want to do that for like 10 to 15 minutes during the lesson, because, like I said, 3 to 10 per minute. If you do an hour block, that's what's 180 to 600 times or opportunities to respond during that hour. I mean, that's going to be a little difficult. So you want to set it up for a certain time limit and then provide those students with those opportunities. Uh, Prompts to respond should cut across academic and behavioral domains. Uh, some options or some strategies that you may use with your students is, working in groups, working as pairs, small group instruction, student-led instruction as well. Then look at different ways that you can promote your students as being the experts on a topic or a subject and let them lead the class or lead the discussion or teach that subject. I did that with a couple of kids in my classroom. They were really interested in some some uh, topics that all the other kids were kind of interested in as well. So I had a couple guys that were, they were. Uh, well, one of them was doing skateboarding. I had no idea anything about skateboarding, and they were talking about all these moves and all the vocabulary that went with skateboarding and that culture, and I had no idea. So I had them to get up and do a little presentation and show, talk to the class and staff and things like that, and it worked out really cool. After that, it showed that, they were able to provide us with information about things that they cared about and knew about, and it helped to uh, decrease those acting out behaviors and increase that on task behaviors. So, look at different strategies and use different things for your students to get them engaged in not only the lesson but also within the classroom. Uh, so like clubs and things like that. Actively monitor and provide feedback. So monitor that your students are engaged and provide them with that positive, corrective feedback. Always provide your students with feedback. Closely monitor their learning, and when they finish a task or exhibit an appropriate behavior or a desired behavior, then provide them with feedback. And one of the greatest ways of providing feedback with behavior is behavior specific praise. Tell the student exactly what you're praising them for and why they're being praised. If kiddos walk down the hallway for the first time, thank you. Wonderful job following hallway procedures. You walked on the right hand side of the hall correctly. I'm so happy that. Thank you. That was amazing. Or a student may turn in homework. Oh, thank you for completing your homework. It's a great job. I really appreciate you promptly returning it and for getting it turned back in. So monitor progress, monitor progress, yeah, of course, but monitor what your students are doing and provide them with that feedback. To help them practice correctly instead of practicing things incorrectly. So, actively engaged students have the best chance to succeed within learning and behavioral tasks. You have to ensure high levels of engagement, and you must maintain and communicate high standards for all teachers. We talk about, we set those expectations, and for all students, we have high expectations because we believe that they can succeed. And, we show those students that we believe that they can succeed by our encouragement, by our feedback, by monitoring, by providing them with that guidance. And then, some kids need some scaffolds, and we may need to break down some tasks, smaller steps for some kids, but provide those students with those scaffolds and those accommodations. So there are three dimensions of student engagement. One of those dimensions of student engagement is behavioral. These are the visible actions. So when we're looking at student engagement as far as behavioral, what do you think that would look like? What does that look like? I think for me, and if we look at behavior, I think for me, first thing when we look at behavior, we think about what? Rules and expectations. So one of the dimensions of student engagement is the behavioral side is following the rules and expectations, following the steps in a process, or completing a project, working together. Uh, uh, those are things that I think of as far as behavior. Some other things that we may look at are the students are they participating in extracurricular activities? Are they willing to participate in class discussions and projects? Are they do they actively participate in uh, class discussions? Do they have consistent attendance? Do they turn in assignments as on time. Those are all the things that we see and we think of when we think of student engagement. So their academic involvement and participation in learning activities includes such things as effort, persistence, attention, asking questions, participation, following rules, and showing appropriate desired behaviors. So this is often type of engagement that we think of as educators because this is the one that we kind of focus on more because we see that we can see the behaviors more, the actions more than the other ones. Another type of student engagement is cognitive engagement. Are students invested in their learning? Uh, do they use critical thinking, and do they have a desire to understand concepts? So, cognitive students engaged cognitively are more likely to persist through challenges, develop determination, and achieve deeper mastery of materials presented. So a cognitively engaged student, have you got any of those students? I mean, they're hard to find and rare, but that go above and beyond when they're completing a project or have an assignment or something like that. Uh, so these are students that not only complete the assignment just to complete the assignment, but they look behind the scenes to figure out, a little deeper dive into what's going on. They look at understanding underlying concepts, and they think about material in a different way than what I just got it finished, turned in. Don't worry about it. So those kiddos are cognitive engagement are, those are the ones that you can tell. I mean, you don't have to be, they're intrinsically motivated to do better in school, to study more, to work harder, to go to on to classes, on to further their education after high school. So those are the kids that, like I said, uh, they have a strategic investment in their learning and the learning process. And then our last dimension is emotional, and this is one that I think we were talking about just a moment ago. You know, do they feel connected? All students need a sense of belonging. Again, we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Students who feel emotionally supported and connected often remain engaged and committed to their studies. So, positive relationships with classmates and teachers spark motivation and joy in learning, resulting in long term academic persistence and hope for the future. So, if our kids come to school and it's a fun place, a safe place, an encouraging place for them, then make their school experience as exciting and meaningful to them as you possibly can. All right. So when I was working at a small K through 12 school, okay, and we had maybe I don't know, less than 20 staff, but we had like 400, 500 kids or whatever. And so what we did at opening day, we took a dot and put beside every kid. If you knew that kid or knew something about them or interacted with that kid, you put a dot beside that kid's name. And so there was some kids had 10 dots, some kids had 4 or 5, some had more. So, all right, that's all good and great and well and everything, but what about these kids that have nobody beside them? No one knows who they are. No one's interacted. No one's, you know, uh, uh, met with that student or talked to that student. So, what kind of connectedness does that student have? And then so after we did that, we didn't have to, but we went and we made sure that everyone made an effort to connect with a student in the school to, encourage, to help, to make their school experience more fun. So let's think about some of that stuff. Sorry, I got off on that soapbox. I'll cut that out. Emotional engagement refers to effective attitudes students have towards their school, classroom, classmates, and teachers. So, what are some emotions that we see in our classes in our school? We see excitement, we got enthusiasm. We often see, some of our kiddos are happy all the time. Some of our kiddos have some things that are going through, that you may know about. And so, a kid may be going through something that's, for example, I had a young man lived with grandmother and grandfather, and grandfather this was a young kid, so grandpa got sick, and they had to take him to the doctor, and they put him in the hospital for a couple of days. And the kid was scared. He was worried. He was becoming a behavior concern because he was worried that his grandpa wasn't going to be out of the hospital. And so that was one of those times where we had to think about, all right, so what's important to this kid right now? To me, if I was that child, the important thing to me was, is my grandpa going to be okay? Is my and so some of our kids look at that and think about that. So what is important? How can we connect with our kids? How can we provide them with that encouragement and support that so many of them need?
Doug,
Yes,
Tony again. I guess that's what I relate to more because I mean you've known me for years.
yes, sir.
I spent 12 years in an EBD unit to start my career. And I'm still in special ed 27 years later.
You'll get out there.
This is my last one. But
Oh,
I, I w- I have tried to encourage young teachers, new teachers, any teacher. Uh, like I said, I know EBD kids the best because that's
mm,
what I've dealt with the most. And not just EBD kids. I actually think I know it is. Every kid is like you said. Learn something about them, especially if they got an IEP. Read it. I mean, read the social emotional. Try to ask about their history. Because I mean, I had a kid one time, and I'll tell my tale, and I'll get off my soapbox and shut up. And I didn't know. I had to find out. It was early in my career. I mean, you could not keep him awake of a morning. I mean, it wasn't possible. And when it was all said and done, we found out what was going on. Was well, his mom was working night shift. He had three younger siblings,
mm.
one in diapers, and he basically was the parent throughout the night, getting up, changing diapers, fixing breakfast, getting them ready, and putting them on the bus. And he was 12 years old.
Oh man, had to
So
grow up and be an adult real quick.
yeah. So I
Mm.
mean, and I can give you some horrible cases, but I won't. But like you said, that made me think is like this kid really doesn't care about algebra right now. He's not slept in 12 hours.
That's true, man. And I think that's one of the things that like you said, your experience, you've got several years experience, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to learn as you go along. I think one of the another eye-opening experience we had was the principal loaded us up on a school bus and took us on every route that bus went was along to see where our kids lived and where some of them came from, and it was an eye-opening experience for some of our teachers because they weren't from that community, so they did not realize, some of the I guess the impoverished areas that our kids come from, and I was like, "Man, y'all just ought to be happy that they made it to school, after all the struggles that they're going through." And those kids would come to school and they were happy to be there because they kinda got a little bit of respite, but they knew at school they were gonna be fed and cared for and taken care of and loved, so,
That's
thank you. Pardon?
my she would always like make the motion, circle her face. She said, for a lot of our kids we have in school, this is the best thing they see all day. And uh, and I know this might sound crazy, but this was just a few years ago. I had a student. We done exactly the same thing you all, like you were saying, you did,
Mhm.
which I had to do a home visit for a reeval. And I mean, they had two rooms in their house was dirt floors.
Oh, man.
Didn't have running water, nothing. I mean, I know that sounds crazy for this day and time, but I mean, it happens.
Mhm. Oh yeah, it happens. I mean, I think it happens more than we really realize too, and especially after the flooding and all that stuff. Man, just imagine how many. We still got kiddos living in trailers or campers, and they've been like that for a couple or 3 years, and so it's just yeah, it's a difficult time for those kids. But like you said. that's the best thing that in that kid's day right there is coming to school and being with you folks, man. That was the best part of his day. So thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and look at some evidence-based practices or strategies. First one we want to talk about is a bit of active learning, and so these active learning activities could include, or strategies could include, group discussions, solving tasks together, peers teaching, engage students more effectively than during passive listening. Active learning promotes critical thinking, problem solving, and knowledge retention. So, incorporate activities that require students to apply concepts to improve engagement by making the material more relevant and interactive. And when we're looking at active learning, what are some things or some ways that our students can show us through actions that they understand the concepts? You know, instead of just paper and pencil and taking a test, some of our kids may be able to do a performance or show a project that they've completed and discuss it and talk to you about it, and instead of the paper and pencil stuff. So look at different ways that you can engage your students rather than just lecture, paper and pencil, sit and get, whatever. What are some other activities or other things that we can do to increase their opportunities to respond and make school a little more exciting for them? So we'll also look at formative assessment and feedback. When you're looking at formative assessment, you look at things, little quizzes or reflections, some low stake tests, just opportunities for students to monitor their own progress, and then provide them, like I said, with that positive corrective feedback, and provide them with that feedback as quickly as possible, so that they're not practicing their misconceptions, or they're not practicing in the wrong thing or doing the wrong uh, process or procedure. So provide them with that feedback, and focus on effort and achievement so that you can keep those students motivated. I had a young man. We had give him 20 problems to do on a quiz, and if he got 5 of them done in 2 hours, I was tickled, and I encouraged him, and I made a big deal out of it because that was more than he got accomplished in 2 hours before. So, look for those small wins and cheer those small wins on. Look at some collaborative learning things such as group work, peer assessments, cooperative projects. So, look at some ways that you can group your students together so that they work together as a team. This not only helps them complete a project at the school or in your class, it also helps with the uh, building those skills that they'll need out of school, such as teamwork, such as problem solving, things like that. Working together to help set a goal, work together, get and accomplish that goal. So it helps these activities help students feel, I guess, more connected to peers and the materials, and then to the school setting and the community as well. So look at culturally responsive teaching. So what are some ways that I can integrate? You know, I, most of the kiddos play or know about video games. So how can I make my class uh, interactive enough that we could bring in some gamification? I guess you could say. What are some strategies? We could use point systems. We could provide those with little badges, little tokens of achievement, little certificates. We always did, I always did a student of the week, in the class that I had, and it was just a little piece of paper to me, but to the kid that was a student of the week, man, he took it back home and showed it to his parents, and they would bragged on him and things like that, and so it was really cool to see that, like I said, and that was something that uh, he earned. So that I got to show that off. So, what are some culturally responsive ways that we teach? Like I said, most of our kids are into games and competition and things like that, so they'll respond to the games. I think. Look at some personalized learning. Look at tailor instruction to students' individual needs or also their interests and learning styles. A lot of times we just use one type of teaching and it don't hit on those differing learning styles our kiddos have. What are they? Kinesthetic, they got to get up and move about. Oral, they can tell you about it. Written, they can write about it. So what's their learning style? How do they learn best? And how can they show you what they know and adjust your instruction to meet the needs of those students? What are some accommodations that I'm going to have to make in order for the student to be successful? So look at that. Look at personalizing their learning, and look at making instruction. Or lessons that are more student centered around what's going on in their life in their immediate community. Some of our kiddos don't see themselves in a world setting. All they see themselves is in their little community setting or their town setting or county setting. Some of them get to that state recognition or realizing that they are part of a larger, bigger network that involves a whole lot more people. But some of our kids, no, but just what is important to me right now and how does that apply to my life and how can I use this when I get out of school? Set clear and high expectations. Of course, if you set those high expectations and you communicate that to your students, then most of them will strive to and then be active in uh, uh, your classrooms. Be active in your instruction. Be active in things that be a supportive teacher. Is basically what it is. Uh, Participate in discussions, provide feedback, demonstrate enthusiasm with your students, and once you do that, it often uh, fosters higher levels of engagement and success for our students. So that's kind of it. Thanks everyone for being with us this afternoon. I appreciate it. Again, thank you. I'm Doug Smith with Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. I work at the Special Education Department as a behavior consultant. If you, I should have put my email up there, but my email is doug.smith@hazard.kyschools.us or doug.smith@theholler.org. If you have any questions or need any assistance with anything, or just please feel free to reach out to me. And thanks everyone for being here. And so for other professional learning opportunities, please visit the website KVEC SERTAC.theholler.org.